All right, folks, it's time for another dramatic blog reading from adamgolding.substack.com, where I will be running my campaign against Chrystia Freeland. Okay, so, well, I have more than one website. This is not a sort of street vignette like the last 5 or so pieces I just read into the live stream channels. This is one of my more theoretical pieces, which takes a lot more work to digest if you don't know what every single term means in some cases. It certainly would have taken me. I would have had some stress reading some of this writing when I was an undergrad in first year, but it just rolls off the mind now. So I assure you it makes perfect sense. Just this is a hard concept, and what this culminates in. It's a brand new voting system, brand new system of government. I'm working on becoming a math teacher right now. I do know what I'm talking about, folks. So bear with me here. This one's not easy because it asks you to hold yourself individually accountable, but also to really reimagine the whole system and unend the to disengage in system justification, which is very pervasive if you look that up psychologically. A lot of literature on that. All right. How to end classism. We can start with your attitude. So how do we end classism? People might protest. You can't end classism. It's just like part of being human to be classist. Is it really? Maybe that's what you think. So yeah, how do we end? Emphasis on the end, not just this is the question I'm proposing here, not how do we reduce it, blah blah blah. Just we're asking what would be necessary to end it. We can start with your attitude, which is definitely classist. Psychological classism we're going to start with. My attitude's fine, the naive classist protests, oblivious to how they judge people, and merely knee-jerk denying the accusation because it's negative. If you don't know how you judge people, how do you know if it's based on class? You don't. And I can tell you that you do judge people based on class. Most are so unreflective that they think their judgment's fair as if they come from nowhere, perfectly balanced on the basis of no information at all. But what do you judge people based on? If you don't know what it is, then you don't know if it's class. Basic math, people. Do you successfully dissociate from someone's physical appearance when you engage with them? Physical appearance is tightly tied to class, whether it comes to fashion or to race. The same goes for other sensory attributes, such as someone's smell, taste, sound, or feel. Review the parable of the Good Samaritan and get back to me. Now, it's natural to object. We can't judge purely on the soul because it's immaterial and therefore imperceptible. The same can be said of quote-unquote behavior, for as Hume remarked, causation, quote-unquote, is invisible. Read your Hume if that's not clear. But what if we had attitudes that largely were reformed through individual reflection to cease all prejudice and skip now 0 steps in every argument, giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, and hence tying agnosticism and epistemic humility to fairness and social humility? Would that be it? Would that be the end to classism? Of course not, for no pervasive psychology logically guarantees its permanence. Here, quote-unquote, systemic and not merely psychological classism comes into play, what we call systemic classism, right? Okay, systemic classism. We don't usually start with your attitude. Actually, you can be relieved now. You're off the hook for a minute. We don't usually start with your attitude. We do these days start with your carbon emissions and stuff, but we don't usually start with your attitude. The analysis usually begins with wealth inequality. Click that link for a great video from the Broadbent Institute, named after the late, great Ed Broadbent, who, ironically enough, I learned of his passing mere moments after I published this article. I hit publish, checked my messages, and my friend had told me that Ed Broadbent had passed, and I was like, wow, his institute is the first link in this article. So view that one. Okay? So yeah, we don't usually start with the attitude. The analysis usually begins with wealth inequality. This kind of classism reinforces and reestablishes what is classist merely in psychology, rushing you to skip over steps in your argument internally in favor of your overlords. It's massive, the wealth inequality. It's been growing. It's at French Revolution levels, and it's growing more. And it makes elections impossible. One person, one vote means nothing if you can purchase votes so easily. The greater the wealth inequality, the more viable elections become. I hope that makes sense. But wealth is not equalized overnight without bloodshed. And yet the revolution is inevitable if you look at inequality curves throughout history, or so I'm told, but not the bloodshed. The bloodshed isn't inevitable. There have been peaceful revolutions in history. That's what I'm saying there. And this can be one of them. Be part of the peaceful revolution, everyone, because we clearly have to avert a violent one. I've been saying this for a long time, and people said it seemed a little crazy then, but we are on the brink of World War III right now. So, I mean, I've said we've been in it since 2014, but we need a peaceful revolution. Getting the money out of politics. Getting the money out of politics has been a catchphrase for as long as I've been alive. There was a guy on Rachel Maddow, I almost mentioned him here, who was made a big deal of how he was only taking small donations, must have been 20 years ago now. I almost mentioned him here. Anyway, and the usual idea for getting the money out of politics, spending caps, has been blown off completely in the U.S. via Citizens United. Look that up if you haven't heard of Citizens United. Actually, see this other article I did, Why the Right Became Obsessed with Freedom of Speech, for more on this weird mind game where money was equated with speech. Despite it lacking speech's expressive capacity, where is money on the Chomsky hierarchy anyway? Even in Canada, with spending limits, it's easy to buy an election. An opponent, I ran for Ward 11, an opponent cited figures from his advisor to me, privately, how much it would cost him if he wanted to buy the riding with ads. It's not that expensive. And Rob and Doug Ford purchased many council seats this way. Just tally up the donations. You have to actually do the math. I had a volunteer did this. We learned this. You tally up the donations. They were the top donors for years by a long shot, Rob and Doug. Meaning, they own these people. They vote as a block. Team Tory was Team Ford behind the scenes. And the premises of Condorcet's jury theorem are invalidated. Counsel isn't made more accurate by having many voices as on a jury because the voices aren't independent. They are financially shackled to act as one hive mind, not the plurality that would leverage the wisdom of the crowd in a democratic assembly. Money makes us stupid. Votes per dollar. So what do? It's simple, actually. We divide them out. What do I mean? We remove the money from politics by simply dividing it out mathematically. Divide vote totals by the money spent. Here's a thought experiment. Candidate 1 spends $100, gets 100 votes. Okay. Candidate 2 spends $1 million, gets 101 votes. So they had to spend, $1 million minus 100 to get that extra vote to break the tie. Who has the stronger mandate? The answer is blindingly obvious, right? And yet it's been staring us in the face all this time. Why didn't we see it? That, that clearly the person who had to spend that much just to break the tie, they don't have the stronger mandate. They just got more votes. But why do we see it? The answer is not just that power never concedes a demand willingly, but that democracy is still very young, and decimal numbers are even younger. But do the math on your favorite election. You can just do this. Look up the vote totals, and look up the spending budgets, and do the math. Divide votes by dollars, and see who really should have won. Votes per dollar, people. Our true leaders are those who earn the most votes on the smallest budget. This entire system as it is rewards overspending despite the gulf. Compute our true leaders and listen to them. The numbers are public. Votes per dollar is how to end classism.